From the title of this thumbnail, you might think this would be a better video for Halloween than for FebRegency. But this book was actually written within the proper Regency period. It was published in 1816, smack dab in the middle of who later became King George IV's term as regent for his father. And I decided to include it for FebRegency because it is a Regency book, and I wanted to get one last video in for FebRegency. I'm so glad that February is a leap year this year. Gives me one more day to get a few more videos out for this fun topic for us bookish booktubers. And this book is actually on Project Gutenberg. I will put the link to it in the description. I'll go ahead and show you that now. And as you might be able to tell, back in the day, if you haven't heard of it, it actually happened that people were buried alive because they didn't really have a sense back then of the different shades of dying, of actual death physically. And it makes sense on a certain level because they only had their eyes, ears, hands, they only had their physical senses to make sense of what they saw happening in a person before them, to know if they were dead. They didn't have the kinds of tools that we have or the greater understanding of anatomy and physiology that we do. All right, let me show you the actual book here at Project Gutenberg. The danger of premature interment, which means the danger of burying somebody prematurely. And here's the picture that you saw part of in that thumbnail. And this is a picture that supposedly shows the body of the daughter of Cicero being discovered entire and uncorrupted in a sepulcher 1,500 years after her death. Well, I don't know if I quite believe that, but that's what that picture's caption is. This book doesn't have a proper table of contents or anything, but I loved the long title and subtitle. It gives you a sense of what this book is about. The danger of premature interment, proved from many remarkable instances of people who have recovered after being laid out for dead, and of others entombed alive for want of being properly examined prior to interment. Also, a description of the manner of ancient Egyptians and other nations preserved and venerated their dead, and a curious account of the sepulchral ever-burning lamps and mausoleums. Likewise, the pernicious effects of burying in the body of churches and confined churchyards pointed out, whereby many valuable lives have been lost to the public and to their friends, selected from historical records. Have you ever heard the term saved by the bell? I don't think that was so much a Regency thing, but that actually harkens back to definitely Victorian times, where they would actually put a bell on a supposedly dead person's finger, limb, toe. So that way, if they were buried alive, if they heard the bell, somebody could unearth them, bring them up, and see if they were indeed alive. And if you were actually saved by the bell, what a very lucky person you would have been. So read just a little bit from the introduction here, because it tells this author's purpose for putting this book forward. Amongst the many dreadful calamities incident to human nature, none surely is more horrid, yeah, and I would agree, nor can be thought of more appalling than even in idea to be buried alive. The very soul sickens at the thought, yet terribly frightful as the imagination paints such a dire event, these things have been. Historical record clearly demonstrates the melancholy truth, and many a valuable member of society has, I am fully persuaded, times past been prematurely consigned to the grave before the vital spark has been extinct. To prevent, if possible, such deplorable events from ever again happening is my principal motive in forming the present volume. The substance of a motto I have somewhere seen several years since on a silver medal, whereupon is prettily displayed the figure of a boy blowing with his mouth at a piece of lighted charcoal nearly extinguished, in hopes again reinvigorating the flame, has ever since been indelibly impressed on my mind. Who knows, says the motto, but one spark may yet remain alive. That was actually an interesting bit to put in the introduction, because I actually worked on this book before it came to Project Gutenberg. I worked at the on the distributed proofreaders website that helps bring books to Project Gutenberg. And I remember being fascinated. The section that I worked on, I'm actually a registered nurse, so I have definitely an interest in these sorts of things from a professional as well as personal perspective. And I was amazed in the sections that I read how much they really did not have a sense of what physical death was. Of course, they knew that people died. People didn't live forever. But the minutiae, the details, what distinguished, say, what we would call a coma from someone actually being dead. In parts of this book, and I can't remember exactly which parts, because it's been a while since I worked on this book, but parts of it, like the author expresses like the idea that people can be reanimated. Like, oh, we think they're dead, but just open a window and bring in some fresh air and you'll find they're alive again. Or rub some whiskey or some alcohol or try to get them to drink something and maybe that'll bring them back to life, or put them in a warm tub. They definitely didn't understand what true physical death meant. And when I was working on this book, for me, it was almost a page turner. It was just like, oh my God, how did they see this way? How did they not see that? It's an eye-opening book on a very interesting topic. So in this book, I wish I was a table of contents so I could better show you what it's really about, but it explores all sorts of things. It looks at deaths historically in different cultures, first a little bit here and then a little bit more at the end of the book. There's several accounts of, yes, the remarkable instances of people who have been nearly buried alive but recovered by resuscitative applications. So this gives all sorts of like weird little anecdotal stories about people who supposedly were thought dead but were saved by being buried alive by various measures. Oh my goodness, this is just, it's a surprisingly fascinating read, and certainly if you have any nursing or medical background, you'll be blown away. It'll be a page turner for you, I'm sure, like it was for me. And what else? This is all these different supposed historically documented facts of people nearly being buried alive. And what else is in sorry if I'm scrolling fast for you, but let's see. Oh yeah, and then here's where there's more detail gone into about how different nations buried the dead. And I think there's even bigger one on Egypt and mummification and those sorts of things. But if this sounds interesting to you, I definitely recommend that you check it out on Project Gutenberg, because it is quite the fascinating read. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video. And if you love old books like I do, please subscribe to my channel. If there's anybody you know who has any interest in this topic, please share this video with them. And thank you very much for watching.